All right, so you are well aware of what happened the other day when Francisco Lindor sort of made it clear if anybody had any hopes that he was going to sign a contract sometime soon, they are fully aware that that's not going to happen. Anything about that surprise you?
Not really. Even when he was talking during spring training about how he believes baseball can afford a salary like his, and the Indians were showing interest in negotiating or at least making an offer to him, I still didn't think it was going to head anywhere. I mean, you're talking about one of the top 5 players in the league right now who sees himself as a $400 million guy or $350 million guy.
Well, he's only that. He's only
Go
that
ahead.
if there are teams that'll bid against each other at that level, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
right now. There may be. Who do you think? The Yankees, Dodgers, and who else?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the teams that were at the top of the payroll last year, and it's Yankees, Dodgers, Boston. I believe the Washington Nationals were 4th, and we know that they didn't re-sign Bryce Harper. So,
And they won the whole thing.
and they won the World Series. So, I wondered what you made of the math. I hear Lindor say that they ought to be able to afford him if they can put a $120 million payroll out on the field. I'm not so sure that's true in every season. If he's going to be pulling in $40 million a year, is that what we guess his average salary would be?
Over 10 years.
35.
Yeah,
35.
I would think 35 is that number. I think whatever is the biggest number at that time, and right now the biggest numbers would be Machado and Harper.
Trout, right? And Harper, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Trout not far behind.
I mean, there's a whole nother discussion to have, Les, as to whether it makes sense to sign any one baseball player to that kind of a deal. In those markets where they can command that kind of payroll, generally they're also at the high end of the attendance every year. And I am not by any means putting the onus on Indians fans, but they've had Francisco Lindor to watch for how many years now? Has that sold out the park? Did it sell
No.
it out in
Didn't sell it out in
2016
no.
when they went to a World Series, in 2017 when they were coming off a World Series loss?
Well,
I just think that the economics of it don't suggest that it might not be the smartest move.
not just for Cleveland, but for most other teams.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe at the end of this season, though, Boston may say, we really messed up on Mookie Betts, but we can make it good by signing Francisco Lindor, and maybe that money shows up again.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that $120 million doesn't sound like a lot to people, but you have to figure out, like, how are you going to keep a pitching staff together when Bieber and Clevenger can command what they should be able to command as a number 1 and number 2 starter. With Santana, Santana's not going to be around in the distant future, or maybe even the near future, but we're talking about a guy that was 15 to 20 million probably based on his production last year.
I had a thought while driving around looking for strange addresses. No, it's not. It's not what it seems to be. I started thinking that, just like you said, that there's no guarantee if you have Lindor that A, it gets you anywhere, and B, it sells you a lot of tickets. And I know that there was a quote from Paul Dolan years and years and years ago, and he said something to the effect that if they show up, the old restaurant thing, that you start coming here and we'll make better food. You remember that analogy that he used?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's some kind of a deal, because Paul Dolan isn't going to please the Indians fan base no matter what he does. But I'm wondering if you could almost make a deal with the fans, if you're Paul Dolan, where you said, all right, I'll give you the economics of it, and here's what we have, how many tickets we have to sell and all that. And I'm just wondering if they made an offer to Francisco Lindor or anybody in the future and showed you how much that really brings in financially. I'm just wondering if maybe the fans would get into a bargaining thing where they would say, all right, we'll buy X amount of tickets, and if so, you'll be forced to sign a commitment for $20 million, $30 million, or whatever it is.
I mean, it's a nice thought. But history tells us that fans don't speak with one voice. We've heard people before, fan groups get together and talk about boycotting a team or a sport.
No.
or turning their back during a national anthem over something that they didn't like, and generally that just passes and nothing ever happens. So
Right.
it would be a hard thing to gather that many people together for a common cause. But I would be interested in hearing the results of that. Like, what would it take? What do they feel they can spend on the rest of the roster if they're paying Francisco Lindor $35 million a year?
Well, I heard some talk on radio that that it doesn't make any sense economically to spend over 22.6% on one guy or whatever, and so what they suggested is up the amount that the whole team payroll is, and that doesn't do any good except give you some made up number that you then have to meet. I mean, if you're going to do that, you may as well just pay that amount no matter what. Overpay.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason why this ownership had a minority owner. I think they're a very good family, good for Cleveland, but also a family that people mistakenly think are billionaires, or running around with Dan Gilbert-like money and just refuse to spend it. I just think this is about what we're going to get as long as the Dolans are the owners here.
Yeah, the Indians.
You can tell them to sell it. I mean, you
Yeah.
can scream and get on a soapbox and say, sell the team. They're not going to sell the team. I mean, they're part of the community, and this team's part of the community.